afternoon, and welcome to Let's Talk About It, all the things.
Yes.
Hi, Whitney.
Hi, Chris. Welcome back.
Thank you.
Taking that month off was kind of nice, but I went through a little withdrawal.
Did you?
Yeah, I miss this.
I did too. This is fun, and
Well, you had a good vacation?
I had a great vacation.
Good.
Great vacation, yes.
Good.
How was your July music festival?
Oh, it went real well.
Awesome.
Very well. Yeah. Wait till next year.
Yeah.
It's just gonna be even
Gonna be
better.
really ginormous.
Yeah. So we'll talk about that.
Exciting.
Yeah.
Very cool. Well, welcome back to season 2 of our podcast. Because remember, at the end of season 1, we said we're getting fancy and we have seasons now. So this is season 2, officially our first episode.
Okay.
So we're super excited.
Yeah.
We have some great guests today.
Oh, I'm excited about this one. I've been waiting for how many months now?
Since April.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know.
This is gonna be good.
Yeah, Whitney's been counting down days to have this conversation. So,
Yeah.
and I think that this is going to be really great information for all of you out there. This is just another perspective of mental health and mental wellness and suicide. And so I think this is a really important conversation to have. And so let's dive right in, right?
Yeah. So who do we have today?
So today we have Tonya Hamilton. I had to read her card because I couldn't remember. North Oakland Community Coalition. And we have my friend, Cindy Gresham. And Cindy lost her daughter, Haley, in 2022 to suicide. She was also 15, the same age as Nikolai was. And I met Cindy through Clarkston School District, and I met with her and her husband shortly after Haley's death. And we just kind of bonded, and we've become friends. And I'm just so grateful that you are here today to talk with us a little bit about Haley and kind of your journey with that, and also the start of your own organization, Haley's Helpers. I want you to make sure that you talk a little bit about that so people are aware and can start following you as well. So let's dive right in. So Cindy, do you want to start and tell us Haley's story?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. Been excited to do this, and I'm just really proud of all the things that you've done, Chris. I mean, it's just grown in the 2 years I've known you. I feel like your foundation has just sort of exploded. So congratulations on that.
Thank you.
So I lost my daughter Haley at, like you said, 15 on September 7th, 2022. So we are coming up on the 2-year marker really quickly here. It doesn't feel like 2 years. I know that probably sounds like a long time, but I would say I'm probably to the point where just 10% of the day that she's not constantly on my mind. And that's probably because I'm watching TV or I'm working. Before, when I was doing those things, it was very hard to focus. So I feel like in these 2 years, that's pretty much like the progress that I've made. So I still have a long way to go. But Haley, like I said, she passed by suicide on September 7th. And, we just really had absolutely no idea. We didn't know she was struggling with anything. And, I was really close with Haley. Like we were really close. I kind of always related it to, I know I'm kind of dating myself here, but the Gilmore Girls.
Oh,
Yeah, I always felt like we kind of had that different relationship. And, her friends would comment on it all the time. And she would talk to me about everything. And it just sort of taught me that we never know.
Mhm.
We never truly know what people are struggling with, even the ones that we think we're super close with. And so I think a lot of people think, in these situations, like they're afraid to bring up your daughter or your child. I'm sure you run into this because they don't want to upset you. But I think it's the opposite, or at least it's for me. Haley is my favorite thing to talk about. She always has been. She was our only child. So I'm just going to tell you a little bit about Haley. So Haley, she was just fun and silly and just fun loving. She always was laughing. She, she liked horror movies, and she liked those ghost shows. She used to watch the paranormal stuff with her dad. She was an amazing artist. She was super creative. But mostly, I think what separated Haley from most people is she had this kindness that not all of us possess. And she just literally had that since she was a small child. When she was just very little and could barely talk, she was always walking up to people in stores and complimenting them. She would tell them they have a nice sweater or just start a conversation up. And as she got older, she would tell us, well, they look sad. Or, you know, she always felt like the elderly got overlooked and people didn't treat the elderly. So she always paid attention to them. And that was just very small all the way up until she passed. So she just kind of had this, she had always been an empath and she could always kind of read people. And so she was just a light that I think people were drawn to. And she, would kind of take people's problems and help them feel better. And they would walk away with a little bit of her light. And I think she kept a little bit of their darkness. And that's just kind of what truly made her special. And so she just wanted everybody to be happy all of the time. So given that, this was the opposite of somebody that would do something like this because it hurts everyone. So it's hard to put words to it. I don't know that there's a word to exist. I'm sure you've had to try, but shocking, traumatic, horrific, devastating, just, all of those things when it happened. And I think a lot of it was because nobody knew she was struggling and she was the last person. You just wouldn't, think she really didn't fit the typical stigma of what we think of as suicide, or at least what I thought of as suicide. She didn't really have any depression or mental illness. She was a beautiful person inside out. She had a large friend group. She made friends easily, and she was laughing and happy all of the time. So it just wasn't what fit into her, to somebody that was at risk for this. So, basically, I think as a parent, we try to blame ourselves for everything. I think I should have known. I was the closest to her. It's my job to keep her safe, just all of these things. But if I'm being honest, and trust me, I've tried to blame myself in every way possible. I mean, I think of conversations when she was probably 2, and I'm thinking, oh, maybe I shouldn't have said that. What if she was young and I said this and she took it? I mean, you just ruminate on this stuff all the time. But if I'm being honest with myself, looking back, there really weren't any signs with the knowledge that I had at the time. And so, she got in trouble about 4 to 5 weeks before she passed. It wasn't the most horrible thing that anyone's ever done, but it was also something that I didn't think Haley would do. And Haley really had never gotten in trouble. She was always a rule follower. She was a pleaser. So she didn't want to do anything to make you unhappy. And so we never really went through, like, I wasn't a snoop. I didn't go through her room or her backpack or her phone. And looking back, I wish I was. I wish I was a bit of the snoop because I probably would have found things and, way ahead of the time than when I, found them out. So basically, the only thing Haley ever got in trouble for, I think, was like we played Candyland in our house and you won candy, like these big candy bars. And so she was the only child for us, and then she was the youngest grandchild. So even though she was very spoiled, but she was never acted like a spoiled child. But she was used to winning. We all let her win. And if we accidentally won at Candyland, like we gave up the candy to her. But she's going in kindergarten, and I'm thinking to myself, like, she's got to learn to lose. So I win, and I keep the candy. And I had shorts on, and she leaned over and bit me so hard in the leg that I literally had a tooth mark. I had a tooth mark for every tooth in her mouth.
Wow.
That is the only time, like, she ever got in trouble. So we never punished her or anything. So when this happened, because it was something I didn't, expect her to do, I decided to go through her phone. And I think, I think we like to think, or at least I like to think, I'm going to be smarter than my parents were. Like, my daughter's not going to get anything over on me. I was so wrong. But she, so we had to go pick her up. She was with a friend, and she was at their house when she got in trouble. So that gave her time to go in and unfriend all her friends in Snapchat so that the chats wouldn't show up. But she was smart enough to not do it with every conversation because I would know something. So she left some in there. She thought she had everything that was incriminating, but there was one that said something about somebody owing her a cart and a breeze. And of course, I don't know what that means. So I had to Google it and I found out that those were terms for vaping nicotine and marijuana. So I confronted her and she came clean right away. She was very honest about it. And she said that she had been vaping nicotine for 2 years and vaping marijuana for a year. And I started thinking, like, that's why I started putting the pieces together. She had asthma, and we, in the last year, had been in and out of the ER. And it was scary because she couldn't breathe. And we just kept thinking her allergies were getting worse. But quite honestly, it was because she was doing that. And I was a little bit surprised because we had had so many conversations, age appropriate, over the years about, drugs, about alcohol, about, smoking. But I was surprised that she did anything that was lung related because we really focused on that. And I guess like I knew she was going to try something. So I was angry that she was doing that. But in my mind, I thought, okay, it's just weed. She's just smoking weed. Like it's legal now. Um, there's a lot of medicinal purposes, for it. And i- it's not addictive. I guess I was thinking like, well, it's not addictive. So in my mind, this is a good learning experience. It was something that wasn't that bad. Now we can treat this as a learning experience. When I asked her why she did it, so tempers were kind of high that night, but the next day I went in and had a conversation with her because I wanted to understand, like, why did you start doing this? And she said, well, my friends told me that it would help with my anxiety. So we were aware that Haley had some anxiety. She had some test taking anxiety and that kind of thing. Um, but I think just anxiety comes a lot with this generation and the age that she was at. So she had a relatively big friend group. So their main group were like 7 of them, and then they had sort of an extended group. So at that age, her friends are wonderful. We're so close to them, but at that age, there's a lot of drama that goes on in the group, especially with guys. So there was guys that were causing issues in the group, and Haley had this fear of her friend group breaking up, and she thought it was her job. Like she told me that her role in this group was she was the glue. She was the one that helped everybody with their problems and kept this group together. And we would talk about it because there was a lot of anxiety that comes with that role. And so I guess when I heard that that was the reason she tried it, that's what I was so concerned about. Like I was like, okay, the weed's one thing, but this anxiety, if I could find a way to help her with the anxiety, she wouldn't need to smoke it anymore. I couldn't have been more wrong. It was like a pivotal point of me helping my daughter. And because I didn't have all the information, I made all the wrong choices. And I'm a fixer. That's what I do. Like I come up with a plan and I fix it. So that's kind of how I handle it. So I got her right into a counselor. I had her into this great counselor the next week. And then I asked her to write a journal because I just wanted her to get all her feelings out. And I had to felt like I had to punish her for the other thing, so I didn't really know what to do. So I grounded her, and then I took all her screens away for the first time. But for me, it was not really a punishment. I needed to unplug her and get her out of that friend group. And then I wanted time to have, with the counselor. And so this is in August and they were going to be going back to school soon. So I wanted time with the counselor for them to come up with tools of how she was going to like handle things going back into the friend group because she was telling me she didn't want to do marijuana anymore because she was saying that she didn't like the chemicals in her body and it was making her feel bad. And so she was kind of happy that we found out about it. And then I saw a little bit of Haley coming back, like the Haley that I didn't know um, that we lost. So there weren't a lot of signs, but over the past year, I had kind of noticed that, Haley started dressing differently. And it wasn't anything bad. She just kind of had a baggier style. She started doing, her makeup differently. Um, she started getting really lazy, which really wasn't like Haley. And she just started not caring about how she ate. She was always very healthy. I noticed she wasn't sleeping well. She was complaining that she, couldn't fall asleep and then, she would oversleep um, because she wasn't sleeping well. And so, you know, there, I was a little bit worried and concerned because like we would ask her to do chores and then she just wouldn't do them. And that wasn't like her. She never wanted to displease us. So she just didn't care if we got mad or not, which was not like her. And I started asking some other parents, that had kind of went through the teen phase already. And they're like, oh, yeah, that's a teenager. That's what they do. They're lazy. They want to be with their friends all the time. Like, and I started thinking back and I'm like, yeah, I kind of think I was a little bit like that. So I just taught, kind of chalked it up to like she's growing up. This is the phase that she's she's going through. When in reality, it was a little bit more than that. So we had her in for counseling and all of that, and then there was a point where it was time to kind of let her go back into her friend group, and she shared with me that she was concerned that her friends weren't gonna want to hang out with her anymore or like her anymore if she didn't smoke weed and or vape weed. And I said, well, Haley, like half of your friends had an elementary. They knew you before you did this. And then, and then I said something very mom like, I think it's good advice, but they don't really appreciate like our mom stuff sometimes. And I said, like, for the people that don't want to hang out with you because you're not vaping marijuana, like that's not your tribe. Those are the wrong people, And she said, well, it's not because they wouldn't want to, it's not because of that, but I think that they would try to support me and they would want to still do it, so they won't invite me and I'll get excluded because they'll want to do it and then it's not, fun if I'm there because they can't do it, or they wouldn't want to hang out with me one on one because it's not fun to vape on your own. So she had a lot of concerns about that. And that was something that like we talked about and I had her discuss with the counselor as well. And we were a little bit worried about like she was starting high school, it was a new school, and Haley doesn't have a good sense of direction, so she's always getting lost. And we were just thinking, all right, this is going to create some more anxiety. However, when she started school, it was like the best year ever that she started. I mean, she had someone in every class, and she had a bunch of people in her lunch, which I know is always a huge concern because you don't want to eat lunch by yourself. And she said, like, "I didn't get lost, mom." She goes, like, even though it's big, it kind of goes in a square and you just keep going up, She said, so it was kind of the easiest school to start. So I thought, great, like we're off to like a great start. And I thought like she was just doing so much better and she was happy. So I think they started a couple of days and then we went into Labor Day weekend. And the first time she was really around her friends was we went to Blake's Sunflower Fest, which we're actually going this Saturday. It's kind of been our yearly thing now. But we went to Blake's Sunflower Fest and we let her invite a friend. And that went well. And then they started school. And she asked me if she could go hang out with her friends after school. And so we thought, all right, we're in a good place. She's in a good place. We have to let her sometime. We can't put her in a bubble. So she went to her friend's house and I went and picked him up, and I mean they were so happy. Like she thought they were going to forget about her. Like Haley was the hub of this friend group. She just didn't really realize it. But they were so happy. They were showing me all these videos that they had made and they were dancing around. They were so happy to see me and they were surrounding the car. So when she asked to go the next day, again, I didn't have a problem with it, but she was it was the first time she was going to go with somebody that was a new driver. So they had a friend that they knew from their church group, and he was a little bit older and he could drive. So she knew that it made me a little anxious. So all day long she was texting me like, "Okay, we're leaving here." Not because I asked her to do it. It's just she didn't want me to worry. "Okay, we're leaving here. We're going here." And she was sending me pictures, and they were just having so much like teen fun. Like there was somebody in a cart, there was a lampshade on the head. I don't know what was going on there, but they were having so much fun and they're sending me little video clips. And she asked if she could stay a little later because they wanted to wait for her friend to get off work. And I just told her to be home at 8:30. She got home at 8:28. Bob and I, her dad and I were upstairs watching a movie in the bedroom, and she came up and she's like, "Mom, I had the best night. Like it was just the best night of my life." And I said, "Look, like you guys are having a lot of fun." She kind of told us a little bit about it. And then she said, "All right, I have to go change and do my math homework." Well, about 15 or 20 minutes later, I started like I was kind of falling asleep in this movie. And so I thought, like, I'm going to fall asleep. And I don't know if I have to drive her because one of the other moms, we were kind of alternating. So I didn't know if I needed to drive her or she was being picked up. And so I was calling her and she wasn't answering, but I figured she was down in the basement. She has like an art studio down there. So I thought she was probably down there doing her homework. And I texted her and she didn't come up, and I went looking for her and she was gone. It was like that fast, probably within 20 minutes of being home. And when something like this happens, it's treated, as an investigation. So they confiscated everything. So we didn't really have um, much to go on. They did find a short note that she had left on her desk that just basically said she was sorry and she wanted to be by here, meaning like that's why she did it where she did it. And we really didn't. We just were in shock, and we really didn't have anything. We didn't have her phone. We didn't. They took all her journals. We just had like nothing. Um, I finally, after a couple weeks, got the nerve up to try to go through a drawer. I had to kind of do a drawer at a time and go through it, and that's where I found the first note. She had left a couple notes for us, and I think she kind of knew like things were because she kind of hid these notes in different places, and she left one out. So, um, in the first note, it gave us a little bit of a clue. It said, um, I think I used to be or I think I used to be a good person, but I've turned myself into a drug addict, and I don't care what people say. Um, that weed's not addictive. It definitely is, and I can't stop. So that was the first time that we were like, "Whoa, wait a minute! Like, what's going on here?" And then, weeks later, we finally, I think it was like 12 weeks later. It was just a lot trying to get everything back from the police. So we got her phone and her journal. So the journal is the one I asked her to do while she was uh, grounded. So that's where we got a lot of information out of because she had been putting her feelings down in this journal. And we started realizing like that marijuana vaping was a huge part of this, but it was, we never heard of marijuana being like this. So it was confusing. And I just started researching everything. And, just started finding out that I think to order to get it legalized and passed, they don't tell you that the products are different today than they were, back in the 70s, 80s, 90s. They're way more potent. And, and so we started realizing like this was like a huge reason. And then her friends, they started showing us like different places in her phone. I think it was YouTube or whatever where she could do videos. So she was recording videos and like she was in her room with us home right next door. She never locked her door and we never knocked. We just would barge in the room. So she had videos where she was getting high, vaping marijuana in her bedroom with us there. We never smelled it, never knew. Then it went on. Most of the time, she was crying. Sometimes you could tell like she felt really pretty or something because she had her makeup all done. But most of the time, she was crying. And then you're able to put right things on the videos. And so, going from memory here, but some of the things that she wrote was she hated the chemicals in her body. She hated vaping marijuana and the way it made her feel. She hated that she was lying to her mom. And she was turning into a drug addict and she didn't know what to do. But the thing that stood out the most is she said, I hate the way my brain works and I don't know what's wrong with me. And then in her journal, she was writing things like she didn't want to tell us, she didn't want to burden people, but she also didn't want to end up in a rehab or a mental institution. So I think she was afraid to share any of those things. So she was kind of like, I don't think she knew that it was marijuana vaping causing that, but she knew there was something wrong with her. She just didn't know what it was. And because she had that awareness, she was able to hide it. And so like none of her friends or, anybody knew any of the things that were going on with her. She just didn't share it with anybody, which was so sad that she was struggling like right next door. I'm right next door, but we don't, know to help her. So, that was just the devastating part of it. And a lot of things that I learned about marijuana vaping and the high potency THC products is just that they're so they're so much higher. So like back in the 70s and 80s, I think it was like 1 to 2% in the 70s THC potency. I'm going from memory, so I hope I have these Right. And then in the 80s, I think it went 2 to 4%. And then when they started kind of engineering like today's flour, it can be up to, they got it to go up to like 40% potency, but they kind of capped out on that. And so then these high potency THC products, dabbing, were born. And then these can, they're able to actually get these up to like 90, almost 99%, almost pure. So, it can range anywhere, from that above 60 up to that point. So, um, it's just a huge, huge difference. And then you put that in a body with an underdeveloped brain, and they're realizing that it changes your thinking. They think it kind of binds to the chemicals and changes that. They realize, like, that it actually shrinks, or the brain, I don't know if it shrinks or if it's just not growing as fast, but like when they were doing studies of the brains of people that were doing these high potency THC, their brains weren't as big as they were supposed to be. So it does all of these things. And then also it, with the anxiety, it actually creates more anxiety. So they hit it and then it makes them feel good for a while, but the high doesn't like last that long. And so they have to keep hitting it. So they're hitting it all day long. And it actually is creating more anxiety, more depression. It does the opposite of what they think. So I think when people, I've heard this from a lot of students, I'm sure you have too, that when you do, they think that it helps with their anxiety, and that's a big, huge misconception. So, I think you probably have some more information on marijuana vaping than I probably do, since you live in this world and with the teens.
So, can I ask a quick question, maybe of both of you? So, I mean, you're talking about, so she was specifically marijuana vaping. So, is there a difference between the levels of, like, if you're smoking weed versus smoking it through
The
a vape?
flour
Yeah,
or an
like,
oil.
Yeah,
Thank
so
you. I don't know the lingo.
that's what I was saying. Like the flour, they have it. It can go up to 40%, and they kind of like tapped out.
Okay.
So then the way that they were able to boost it, they created these other high potency THC products, but I think they call them dabbing, right?
Dab, shatter, butter, all the concentrates.
So it's lower if you're smoking the flower, but if you compare it to what it used to be, it's really still
Sure.
very, very potent.
I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, 2% in the 70s to 40% now. Yeah, I mean,
Right.
that's definitely.
Well, also, I mean, with vaping, I mean, I guess it can fall under, the flower, dab, vape. I mean, now they're doing blends, a CBD with THC, now you got those different levels there, not just a pure THC.
Yeah, for sure. In fact, I would encourage every parent, everyone really, just to be educated. Um, Before today, I just thought, let's just see what's posted on websites today. I check from time to time.
Mm.
And you can go onto any of the local dispensary websites and search products, and it will tell you the THC potency, as well as the CBD potency, the cannabis. So it is good to know that information. And it's interesting to me that when we were talking in Michigan about legalizing, we were talking a lot about medical uses. We were talking about the benefits of CBD and the whole psychological effects of adding THC into the mix. It's interesting to me that when we were really focused on CBD, now we're saying yes, this has 2% CBD, but it has 92% THC, and it's still being touted as being used for the same medicinal purpose. So it's readily available. You just have to go to the websites, say that you're 21, and you can access that information.
Well, kind of going back to the anxiety portion of this, and did you ever find out what type of THC level she was smoking?
So it took like 16 weeks for us to get the toxicology report back, and they don't really go over it with you, but they kind of give you I think like a standard. I guess they give you like a chart. She was always like 5 to 8 times higher, whatever they said, like the standard. Doing it. So it did confirm that she had very, very high levels. Her friends did share with us that, so she had been off of it for, almost 4 weeks when she um, was grounded. So what I did learn is when you try to get off of it, there's so many withdrawal symptoms and they're really bad. So it makes you go into more depression. It creates more anxiety. So they fall into this thing like, well, see, it was helping me because now I have more anxiety. They're not realizing like it created the anxiety and then these are the withdrawal symptoms. And then there's something called marijuana toxicity. And so this is like what I think happened to her. She was used to being able to do she was doing it all the time. So she was able to tolerate a lot of like a very high potency. And then I guess they were out and I found out that her friends had, offered it to her and she did it. And then she did like the normal hits or amount that she would normally do. And when they were driving home, they had to pull over because she was so paranoid and freaking out. They had to calm her down and she was afraid to come home. So she was in that marijuana toxicity because her body wasn't used to that anymore. But it was like the perfect storm. So she's on this, it's creating all of these things, and then she cold turkey goes off of it, and now it's creating more and more. Now she goes, and then now she's in marijuana toxicity because she took too much. It just created the perfect storm, and it is known to cause suicide, ideation suicide. Unfortunately, Haley was a classic case. Like I thought maybe this is a rare thing and it's not. Haley is a classic case, and getting into all of this and learning about it, there's a lot of cases where people have lost their children because of marijuana vaping. So and I just think that like me, a lot of parents, I found out one of the parents of her friends smoked a bong with my daughter. And so I just think that people are like me, they just don't understand. And it's different in an adult brain than it is in an adolescent brain. It's very, very different. So I just, hope that people take away anything from this. They take away that so that because parents are kind of the first defense, it's not just weed. You really need to educate and be aware. And, Haley's friends it took them for two of her friends, it took them forever to get off of it. Some of them are still doing it. They just can't get off of it. And they have a hard time. They said if it's in front of them, it would be hard for them to turn it down. And they also have a hard time finding other kids that don't do it.
Wow.
So I think like back in our day, like I hate saying like aging myself, like back in the day, but back in the day, like it was alcohol for us. Like everybody was drinking, and I don't think alcohol is as popular. It's actually declining, and then the vaping and all the other marijuana, high THC, those are going up, and so it's really really common in her age group.
Now, do you think that's because of the access to it? Like it's easier to access the marijuana now than the alcohol?
Probably. Haley had a plug. I did not know what that was. I learned this later. It's a drug door dasher. So Haley, you can electronically pay a drug door dasher. I think they have to be 18 by it. Was it
21.
21?
Mhm.
It had to be 21. And then they'll go and drop it off at your house. So when we were sleeping, they would put it, even through COVID, they would put it, in a bush or mailbox, wherever she told them to put it while we were sleeping, and she would go out and get it. I watched her bank account like a hawk, so she knew that she couldn't do that. So they were big like food door dashers in her group. I don't know if all the kids do that, but they were big food door dashers. So what Haley would do is somebody would pay for hers that parents don't watch the account, and then Haley would pay them back in food by door dashing it to their house. But I always knew they took turns buying each other food, so I never questioned it. But it's very, very easy to get.
The other thing that we are learning is just access in general in the community now that it's legalized. At the coalition, we put a big amount of effort toward reducing youth access in the form of distributing free marijuana lockboxes to households. Just really making sure we're educating parents about all of this as well. And we see the same thing with alcohol, honestly, still too, about parents serving minors. So the parent education piece is just huge. And I know exactly what you're saying about the increased risk of psychosis, delusions, hallucinations. Studies say that someone who uses marijuana on a regular basis is 5 to 6 more times likely to experience psychosis with marijuana use.
Now, do you believe that there's some benefit to using, like medically, or even possibly for anxiety, because I have heard people say, yeah, I do use maybe a THC blend with CBD or something like that for my anxiety or for, a pain management. Now, do you believe that's still a thing? As long as it's managed decently?
Here's what I'll say about that. We really at the coalition and even in my personal life, I don't take a stand on medical marijuana. That's a conversation between you and your doctor, right? But before this was legalized, I just feel that there are people who use marijuana under the guise of medical use, and it really has become a dependence. And I think that true medical use of marijuana does not result in a dependence like recreational use does.
And one thing, like I'll add to that, I just so Laura Stack, who has Johnny's Ambassadors, Colorado was the first state to legalize marijuana, and so this happened to her son, and she's kind of dedicated her life to studying it and everything. That's where I get a lot of my information, and I just paid to do a 2-day webinar. There's so many like videos I'm trying to get through and so much information, but they have doctors and studies and that. And from my understanding, just from my understanding of what I've recently listened to, there are, I think there are studies to support that it does help with pain. From my understanding, there are no studies that support these high THC products help with mental issues. They actually cause. You can have something that you're predisposed in in your DNA, and they have determined that these high potency THC can trigger and actually cause you to have a mental illness. So, um, that's my understanding from all of the new things. They're testing everything all the time, but that's my understanding. So, I think that, you know, Michigan in 2003 made, what was it, $3.1 billion? We were just talking about
We were just looking that up together.
three
We
point
were sitting in
one.
Starbucks. We'll go get it up
Yeah.
on our phones. Yeah.
$3.1 billion off of recreational marijuana. I'm pretty sure it didn't include medical. Um, so it's advantageous for everybody to think it solves all these problems, right? It's a huge, huge moneymaker. So, that's what you're kind of up against as well, because it's bringing in so much money.
No. Well, that's crazy. I mean,
Yeah, I mean, I guess this is just I'm just so glad to have both of you on because, I mean, even from my perspective, I'm not very knowledgeable. And, I kind of went into this like, well, what's the difference between, you know, smoking a joint and whatever.
Right.
So like, there is a difference. I mean, I'm finding that out. And
oh, certainly. Well, I mean, they have so many different levels of, oh, you have this blend, you have that blend, you have this percentage, you have that. And it's,
And is it regulated in Michigan? I know some states it's not
We
regulated.
do. Michigan has an agency. It's the Cannabis Regulatory Agency, I believe. Um, Brian Hanna is the director of that agency at the state of Michigan. I think he's doing a phenomenal job. But it is regulated if you in dispensaries. But what we tell students all the time is that we have to remember that even if something is regulated at the state level, marijuana, nicotine, vape products, none of that is regulated by the FDA, like at the federal level. Marijuana is still illegal federally. So we encourage students to never trust a label because whether that product was grown in someone's backyard or whether it was purchased by an adult and given to them from one of our local dispensaries, FDA approval, it's not like buying a box of cereal that's been FDA approved. No product like that has been FDA approved. So we don't want them to have that false sense of security. Even just talking about nicotine vaping, if something says it doesn't have nicotine in it, can't trust that label. Or if it says it has a certain percentage, it could be higher. So we just always want to put that thought in their mind. So they're being, savvy decision makers in that regard. Yeah, but we do have the enforcement agency here. We have the regulatory agency in Michigan. A lot of people do not understand the laws and the policies around it when Proposal 8 passed. I think that so many people, unfortunately, were just so happy to have it legalized that they have forgotten that you can't use marijuana in a public space. You can't sit in your car in the Kroger parking lot and consume it. You cannot drive under the influence. And there is a lot of enforcement work that I still feel needs to be done.
Yeah, because you can basically drive down the road and that's all you smell. I mean,
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And what does that do, right? That really sends the message to kids that this is normal, that everybody does it, that you're not going to get in trouble for it. It becomes a natural part of their upbringing. So work around perceptions with our youth is very important. We talked about youth access, but I truly believe that perceptions is a very big part of this too. We have to do a better job of helping younger people understand the damage it can do to your body, to your mind, and encourage them to choose a marijuana-free lifestyle. And you touched on it earlier. The brain, we know, does not develop until you're 25 years old. So until then, you really want to keep your brain free of substances that affect your development.
And kind of to go back to a little bit of you were saying like what's the difference? So this is one thing that like blew my mind away. And then when I've been doing speaking events, I feel like this resonates, especially when I was telling Haley's friends like they didn't know. So when you have these high potency THCs, like so we're always promoting that marijuana is natural, right? Natural, it's a plant. So here's how they're made. So they basically take the cannabis trichones and they run it through an extractor and they add a solvent such as butane, ethanol, or propane. So they basically put it in this solution, and then they pull the chemical with these chemicals. They pull the chemicals out of the plant, and then the plant gets thrown away. So I'm sure if I said, "Hey, you want to do some butane or ethanol?" I'm guessing people wouldn't be up for it.
Right.
But so there literally is nothing natural about it. And then they boil that down, like they concentrate that into into a wax. So it's just further concentrated. So you have chemicals that you're using to extract chemicals, and then you're boiling them down to make stronger chemicals. But it's being touted that it's natural. Marijuana is natural. It's safe. It's natural. It stopped being natural when you start doing those kind of things. And most people are doing these, especially teens, because I don't think I mentioned when you vape marijuana, like it dissipates really quickly. It doesn't even smell. They're doing it like in classrooms and
So is
stuff.
that's why you couldn't smell it in
So-
her room right
Yeah.
next door to yours.
Now, I'm sure you've been driving down the road where it's like, holy smoke, you
yeah.
can smell it. There's smoke.
Oh, yeah.
That's more the plant. The kids aren't choosing that. They're choosing these high potency THC for probably two reasons. They're more potent and they can
And
get
you
away
can't
with it.
smell
It's discreet.
Or edibles. Edibles is another one.
Edibles,
that's
yeah.
doing that. And just so we're all clear, high potency is considered anything over 10%. So researchers will tell you that's their baseline. Anything not in the double digits is considered a normal percentage of THC. It's something we would compare to the 70s and 80s and 90s. Our THC products in this country have not been they've been double digits since 2010. There hasn't been anything available less than 10%. So we're definitely everything we're looking at now is considered high potency, regardless of what form in which you're consuming it.
I mean, I don't know if you heard about it. I think it was in elementary or middle school. I forget where, but they were eating, I think it was like gummy bears or Skittles or something like that, and it ended up being laced with THC. So
Oh,
almost
I
all the
did hear
kids were
about that. It
like
was in the news.
stoned and getting sick. And then they found out it was just because they either didn't realize it or it was just accessible too easily.
Yeah. The edibles that parents might pick up and not have locked up in their home and they get put in a lunchbox. We hear those stories now.
Well, that and they showed a package and the little corner just said THC. It was like just very tiny, so it wasn't like obvious that okay, there's marijuana in this, so don't touch it if you're a kid.
Yeah.
They don't advertise it very well.
And that's one thing I learned too. So edibles can be made out of the flower, which is going to give you a lower THC potency, or it can be made out of these high potency products. So that's going to be a higher, it depends what they use to make it. And
Yeah.
I don't know that I guess it would be listed for the potency on the label, but if you're not getting it from a dispensary, you have no idea.
No.
And when you're eating it, it's not immediate. So it sneaks up on you. So you really don't know it's really easy to get marijuana toxicity because you don't know how much you've ingested, and then it's too late once you've ingested too much.
It is. So typically edibles are measured in milligrams because it's harder to gauge the percentage in edibles, but 30 to 60 minutes is what it usually takes for the effect to kick in. So if someone who is unaware of how they're absorbed by the body or metabolized eats a gummy and doesn't feel anything, 5 minutes later they may very well think, oh well, this hasn't worked, and take another one, maybe even a third. And then 30 minutes later, 60 minutes later, they realize they've maybe consumed 3 times as much as they had anticipated or had planned to consume. And so that's another risk.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know that either. So that's good information.
And there's a lot more. I mean, we're just kind of touching on the basics. There's so much more to it.
Yeah.
Well, can I just say, Cindy, your story, I'm so just in awe of your ability to share your story and how you have just dove into educating yourself and sharing with other parents. I just kind of sat back with my list of notes because you're just kind of covering everything. You're so knowledgeable
Thank you.
about all of this.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about Haley's Helpers.
So, I knew very early, and I think when I met with you, Chris, I think Haley may have been gone. I don't even know if it was a week,
It was barely, yeah.
barely a week. And I said to you, I'm going to do something. Like, I didn't even know why she was gone. I mean, at the time, I was thinking, I didn't want there to be another suicide. So I think at the time I was down that road. Like, I was going to help. I didn't want any other parent to come through that, but I knew I was going to do something. And I didn't really want to start. At the time, I thought I'll start a foundation, but then that seemed really big and really scary. So I was like, yeah, I'm not doing that. And then, as you know, as we found out about Haley and as it developed, I thought, okay, this is what I can educate. Like, I can educate people. And I wrote. It took me, I think, 8 months to write a Facebook post because I just thought, like, I'm going to throw that out there and just educate people. I have parents on my site, and then Chris asked me to make it public.
So I could share it because it was
So this is
amazing.
Chris's fault.
Way to go, Chris.
Chris asked me to make it public. So, and I'm like, it was really long. So I thought, like, nobody's going to read this. And to make a long story short, I think it was shared 544 times or something. And if you think that people have 200 and 300 friends, I had a panic attack. It was overwhelming. Like, oh my gosh, like, it's really out there because I'm a very private person. And that Tonya was the first one to reach out to me and tell me, like, how brave it was. And that's how and then I started, I asked her, like, can I get involved and help? I mean, I want to help students. I want, how can I help? She came up with this idea for us to do a presentation with Dr. Kilmer. I don't remember, like, I don't know what's his official.
Dr. Kilmer is a professor who does a lot of research on marijuana and in alcohol as well at University of Washington. He's brilliant, and he also has an amazing sense of humor. So he has this ability to just share really important and deep information in a very consumable way that we'll engage with.
And I always was scared of public speaking. So when she said that, I don't know if I ever told you this, but she said that, I was like, yeah, I'm not doing that. It's a hard no for me. But that's not what came out of my mouth. It was like, sure, I'll do that. And then I was going like, why did you just say you would do that? So anyways, it just one thing led to another. And I all of a sudden, I'm like, I'm not doing a foundation. I don't want to start a foundation, but I'm very spiritual. So I was asking for ways to help people. And then I just got this weird download that I was supposed to start a foundation and this and that. And I did not want to do it. And then I kept hearing, if you build it, they will come, from that, that movie.
Yep.
And I was like, no, I'm not doing it. And it was like, I kept hearing that in my head. And then we went to a corn maze and Haley's friend came out of the corn. I didn't tell anybody about it. And he was like, if you build it, they will come. I'm like, this is weird. And then they had a whole thing on the news where they did this movie. And I was like, all right, I'm supposed to do this. So I was probably the opposite story of you. You were probably all gung ho, I'm gonna create a foundation. I was like, yeah, that's not how I want to do this. And I also don't want to public speak. And the two things that I said I don't want to do it are the two things that I ended up doing. So that's kind of that's a short story about Haley's Helpers was formed. And I just know that I want to advocate for mental health. I'm giving myself this year to kind of build it out. I'm a person that likes to strategize and think about things. So March 7th, I think it was, that we got the 501c3 letter. And so there's a lot to, as you know, doing a foundation, it's overwhelming. Um, Tanya has graciously accepted our VP on our board. I'm so excited.
That's
I'm happy to have her. Like,
awesome.
so excited. But so I don't know what all we're gonna do. It's in the kind of the infancy stages right now. And I wasn't gonna do anything until next year, but I've had all these opportunities keep coming my way. So I've kind of been building out and in tandem doing something. So right now, where I see it is I want to do marijuana educating and educate parents and students. So I'm probably going to be doing a lot more speaking engagements. And then I want to do workshops. So the one thing, Chris, you introduced me to Real Talk. And I know that you've had anybody that's heard your other podcasts, I know you kind of went over what Real Talk is. It's going to be said it better than the way I'm going to say it, but basically, Real Talk. I was just so impressed because they have it at Clarkston High School, and it's sort of a way for students to help other students and to not feel alone and to have them talk. So they will have you break off in small groups. And as facilitators, our job is to get them talking and get them supporting each other and keeping that going. There's something they do that's really emotional called Cross the Line, where they read statements. And if it applies to you, cross the line. And like it'll start off with, like, I've had my feelings hurt, all the way to I have parents in jail, I know, or I've been sexually abused. It gets into, and these students go out and they're so brave, and it's amazing. And it's emotional and amazing. But again, another download. I think I was leaving Real Talk one day and just kind of sitting in all of it. It takes a few days to shake it. And one of the things I didn't like is I know all these things about them, and then I go home and I'm just supposed to forget about it. And then also there's a long time between one Real Talk and the other. So I hadn't really tried to raise money for the foundation. I had some donations, and I figured I had enough to do something that I was thinking about. So I wanted to create something. We call it After Talk: Finding Strength in the Struggles. And so I partnered with Clarkston High School. I pitched this to them, and then Haley's, our church, and where Haley went to youth group, is across the street from the high school. So I'm partnering with the youth director, and we just want to create a space like every month where students can continue to come and keep talking about all the things, and supporting one another, and until the next Real Talk. We just want to keep that space so that it's so it's not like they're airing everything out, and then there's a long time. And I think I'm afraid, like, you kind of lose them before that other Real Talk. So I just want to provide that. And we're starting that. I think Real Talk is like
End of
October
October.
25th.
Yeah.
And so we'll be starting that like a month later. We're in the process of building all of that out right now. So I'm super, super excited about that. I did not think that I would be able to do this until next year, because we want to bring in food and, all of that stuff. And so I just didn't think I would be in a place where the foundation I was ready to do that. But we have that all lined up, and we've been spending the summer building that out. And I'm hoping, like, I can figure out more workshops, or maybe, I know that Real Talk is in high school, so maybe, are able to extend it to junior high or middle school, where a lot of these things start. And, and keep that going so that they know that they're not alone, and they can, know that they can support each other. And then we also want to provide, like, I had somebody in my group that said, and it was very odd. He did not know who I was. And he said, I had this girl in my class that started crying because it was her friend's birthday that died. He goes, there was a student here that died. And he's like, and I wanted to help her, but I didn't know the right thing to say. How do you know the right thing to say? And oddly, he was talking about Haley. And I was like, is it Haley Gresham? And he's like, yes. And I'm like, I'm her mom. And he was like, I'm so sorry. I'm like, no, don't be sorry. But that made me realize, like, as adults, I don't think we always know what to say. So if your friend comes to you and says, I'm hurting myself or harming myself, or I'm, um, I'm feeling like I don't want to be here anymore, they don't know what to say. So in these groups, I would like to try to, have a little part um, of the session to be, like, tips and learning, like, what do you do in these things, and that kind of thing, and just kind of spread awareness. Like, I think we focus on getting the students to talk, but what if you're the one they're talking to? What do you do? That's a big thing on you. And so that's what I kind of want to focus on too. So that's my kind of in a nutshell what
That's
where I'm at.
amazing.
And I'm sure like, when you started out, you probably didn't know where you were going to be
Nope,
now. So
it
I
just
don't know where this
evolves.
Foundation's going to go. And I know Tonya, she's
Yeah.
so wonderful and she has so many ideas. So hopefully it'll be.
Just keeps evolving. And honestly, I love the aftercare because you're right. It's like being part of Real Talk. And yeah, like these kids are they're dumping some very heavy things in a space and then they walk away.
Right. I mean,
And-
it's
and-
kind of like a rehab, we'll say loosely.
Yeah.
You got to continue that every single day.
Yeah.
And they definitely need that.
And if you're ever want to be a part of it or facilitate.
Oh my gosh, I would love to.
So yeah,
Totally keep
please,
me informed.
please. Yeah,
And
I think
would
we're
love
gonna
to be
like
part of
announce everything at the Real Talk and all of
it.
that.
Oh
But
my
yeah,
goodness. Oh, I'm so grateful to you for doing that. And
so I'm excited. I just hope
taking that
people
on.
show up.
oh, I don't think you're gonna have a problem.
Oh,
with
no,
that.
not at all.
That's right.
Do you have a website ready?
I do. It's Haley's Helpers Foundation.org, and so the logo has this is I don't know. This is the logo. Dragonfly. Chris and I have a dragonfly connection with a sunflower. It says Haley's Helpers. I say that because there's a woman that has the Haley Roscoe Foundation, and a division of that she has is Haley's Helpers. It's a different logo, and it's where I think they go in and for kids that are in hospitals. But I've had people accidentally donate to that foundation, and so
Okay.
so that's not the name of her foundation. She uses that. Ours is actually Haley's Helpers Foundation.
Okay.
Oh,
Excellent.
Fantastic. This was great.
This was great.
I mean, I've
Was this
learned
everything
a lot.
you were hoping for, Whitney?
Yeah, I mean, I could do a whole nother segment with you guys. Maybe we can do another episode later on. But this was great. I really appreciate both of you being here.
Thank you for having us.
Hope you learned something.
I learned a lot.
Fantastic.
Yeah, I feel like I'm that naive parent. I mean, my kids are grown, but I do have a granddaughter to look out for, and part of what we do is also helping youth, right? So this are really great conversations for me to learn as well. So thank you so much to
Thank you,
Tonya
guys.
and Cindy. We really, really appreciate you coming out and spending time with us today.
Yes.
Anything else, Whitney?
I think that's all for now.
All right. Catch you
you
on the flip side. This podcast is presented solely for educational and entertainment purposes. We are just your friends. Whitney and I are not licensed therapists, and this podcast is not intended as a substitute for the advice of a physician, professional coach, psychotherapist, or other qualified professional.